Hello and welcome. You're with East Mojo with me, Karma Paljor, on our special show, Calling Home. As the name suggests, and if you joined us before, this show is a show for our diaspora. It's our way of connecting with them, knowing about their journey so far, their achievements, and much more. And joining us tonight, a wonderful couple from Boston. Both of them are researchers. I'm joined in tonight by Indrani and Bill Thies. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us. Thank you. Very excited.
Okay, let me introduce them first. Indrani was born and raised in Assam, senior researcher at Microsoft Research in Cambridge, USA. She is a Ph.D. from the Industrial Design Center, IIT Bombay, and she has a master's degree in design from the IIT Institute of Design, Chicago, and her work primarily focuses on user interface design for low, illiterate, and novice technology users. Bill is a principal researcher at Microsoft Research. Also, after completing his PhD at MIT, he moved to India and founded organizations like CGNet Swara and Innovators in health. His work focuses on building appropriate information and communication technologies that contribute to the socio-economic development of low-income communities. So tonight I'm kind of a bit intimidated, right? So I'm speaking to two researchers, two scientists, experts in their own right. So this is going to be a tough interview for me. So I want you who are watching right now to help me with questions. That way I'll be better prepared. I'm also hoping that wonderful child joins us during the live. We're hoping to be in the other room watching TV, but we'd love, for her to come in and say hi to all of us. So that's also what we're expecting. First question to you, Bill. You had a degree from MIT. You could have gone anywhere. Why did you choose to come back to to come to India? Was it because of Indrani?
Partly, yeah. I had met her when I interviewed there in India, but yeah. So first of all, thanks again for having us. I think if anyone's intimidated, it's us because we're not used to having a live stream, so anything could happen today. Yeah, but I really enjoyed as a student kind of the deep, technical challenges in computer science and engineering and building fancy things. I think over time, though, I was always asking myself, is there a way that this technology could really make a difference in people's lives, especially all around the world, and not just in our little niches of the richest places of rich countries? And so that is what really got me thinking. And I spent some time, exploring that question. And I had a hard time finding examples where technology really made a fundamental difference to, let's say, the poorest billion people on the planet. And it was partly that search, looking for how technology could play a real role in, global development. That question is what brought me to be interested in the India lab and to go and visit there when I was a PhD student. And they had an amazing group at Microsoft Research in Bangalore. It's just a really special place where there's a combination of computer scientists and social scientists and designers, like Indrani's training, and that combination was impossible to beat. So I wanted to see it for myself and have 2 feet on the ground and have that chance of immersing in that environment and that culture where I could learn and I could grow and see whether technology could play a role in that kind of context. So
right, and you and I have a connection. I'm from Sikkim, and I was told that you did some work for my state.
Yes, some work in Sikkim. Well, so we do work all around the country in our research. A lot of my work focuses specifically on health and using technology in health programs. And one of the projects that we have done is related to tuberculosis and helping to engage with tuberculosis patients in India. There are almost 2 million patients of TB in India every year, and it's a very challenging process to keep them educated and engaged in treatments so they can make a full recovery. And so one of our solutions that we had uses mobile phones in a new way to help patients report their medication status and other characteristics. And that got deployed actually all around the country. So that's a program called 99 Dots that's in use in every state. And in Sikkim, I think last I checked, there are more than 1,000 patients that have used this platform called 99 Dots. I haven't been there to Sikkim yet myself. I have been to Assam, of course, where Indrani is from, but I'd love to visit someday and see how that's working on the ground there.
Right. You better have visited Assam. Because I don't think Indrani would take too kindly if you didn't visit Assam. But Sikkim, I would like to invite you to, both of you guys, three of you, to come to Sikkim anytime. So, Indrani, you've had an incredible journey. Your academic record, I don't have to mention, speaks for itself. You've done so well. Yet, the focus that you've maintained is to work for a section of society that needs technology the most, but does not have access to technology. It's quite a paradox.
Yeah, that's true. I think increasingly, I think there's more and more technologies, but yes, there definitely seems to be a lot of people still who are, outside of the reach of technology. They might have some technology in their lives, but are not using applications that are complicated to use because they don't have the right technical skills or the right literacy skills. So the aim of the work that I do is to enable people who do not have education or any kind of literacy skills. How do you enable them to use technology? So the idea is to use text-free user interfaces, so interfaces that do not require you to read or write. So how do you use these interfaces to let people have the benefits of technology within their reach?
Right. So now we've kind of spoken about technology. We are going to come back to that because that's the focus of our discussion here tonight. Technologies for socio-economic development. Before that, with your permission, what I'd like also to do is kind of listen to you trace your journey to where you are today, Indrani and Bill. This is in a way to reach out to the youth at home in Sikkim, Meghalaya, Manipur, who might be sitting and listening to our conversation and maybe would one day want to be a researcher at Microsoft or a researcher at Google, So how was your journey and what was your journey all about? Did you always think that you would be where you are today? First with you, Indrani.
So yeah, I grew up in Guwahati, Assam. Guwahati it was a quieter town those days, So I come from a educated, middle class Assamese upbringing. I think I was ambitious from a young age. I wanted to do well. I was hardworking. Also, my parents were very particular that my brother and I did well in academics. There was not much television those days, just Doordarshan and DD Metro. So yeah, books were our window to the world. I wanted to travel the world. So I think ambition, hard work, push from parents, and I think definitely I was also very lucky, very fortunate to find great mentors along the way. So I did my schooling from St. Mary's, Guwahati. It's one of the best schools in Guwahati. So I feel very fortunate for that. Then I did my higher secondary from Cotton College. And after that, I came to NIT Nagpur. Those days it was an REC Nagpur. Did my architecture degree there. And then after that, I worked in Bangalore for a little bit before going on to do a master's in Chicago. And when I was doing my master's, I realized that I was starting to get interested in projects which had to do with designing for low-income populations. So when I was finishing my master's, Microsoft Research was starting this research lab in Bangalore. And there was this very special group that would be focused on, designing technologies for low-income communities. So I applied to the group, and I was very fortunate to come into Microsoft Research because I think I've had amazing mentors, amazing colleagues from whom I've learned so much. And this year I'll be finishing 15 years at Microsoft Research. So it's been unbelievable. And yeah, that's been pretty much.
Wow, 15 years is a long term.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Doordarshan. What is your favorite program on Doordarshan and why?
Oh, growing up, wow. So we used to love Surabhi. I don't know if you watched Surabhi. You know, Siddharth Kakre, Renuka Shahane, they used to talk about different cultural aspects of India, and then there would be audience questions, and you would have to send in your answers written on a postcard. It seems like a different era altogether. So Surabhi was amazing. I was also always very interested in like socio-cultural aspects. So Surabhi definitely was one of the programs that I loved watching. Yeah.
So Bill, what is your favorite program on Doordarshan?
I'll come off. Yeah, they're all amazing.
I'm just joking. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The same question to you about your journey. And did you always think that you would one day do what you're doing today? Or was there a different path in mind?
Yeah, I think people's paths are always changing. I've hardly ever met someone that both had a plan for the next 20 years and then also stuck to the plan. I think there's no shortage of plans, but I'm not sure that plans actually predict an actual outcome. So for me, I grew up in a college town in State College, Pennsylvania, where Penn State University is. So I was kind of surrounded by academics as well from the beginning, and my dad taught, in that university. So, I think it was a kind of natural progression to me to kind of go on and do my Ph.D. And if I was assuming anything, it would be that I would go on and also be, probably a university faculty member of some kind. But I think, as I mentioned before, for me, it was also about finding the most meaningful application of the work that we do and, addressing, global needs and not only needs to one specific place. And so in the end, that kind of took precedence. And so it was a surprise, I think, to certainly to other people around me, surprise to my PhD advisor. Sorry, Saman, surprise to, my parents, and surprise to myself at some level that it would result in this big international shift. I've never been so much of a traveler, more like to stay in one place. But that was the unique opportunity that met with the need of the hour. And sometimes, life takes unexpected turns like that. So I'm very glad that it did go in that direction. And I think we should all just be open to changing tides as opposed to having a grand master plan.
Yeah, actually, I would like to mention while working at Microsoft Research, I also got my PhD from IIT Bombay, and both of these places were extremely flexible in letting me, work and do a PhD at the same time. So I feel very fortunate about that as well in my journey.
Right. We've got some comments. Shahnlad Rambai says, hello, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
And Warsan Monsang says, great moment to be part of this live program. Thank you. Thank you for that nice comment. Okay. Sticking with the both of you, you sent me some notes when we discussed about, what to talk about. So Indrani, I think, had written that we both described our hometowns as small, sleepy places when we met in Bangalore. But when Bill visited Guwahati, he realized it was an amazing metropolis compared to the tiny college town where he grew up in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, these things are, if we're talking surprises, I was amazed with Guwahati on my first visit. It has everything. It has lakes, it has rivers, it has mountains, it has amazing diversity of food, and all these wonderful places. I think often, when we're comparing to the so-called tier 1 cities, that they're frankly quite overrated. And for someone like me, I'd love to spend more time in smaller places. And compared to where I grew up, where if you're driving through State College, and I love State College, but you better not blink on the freeway, or you would miss it. And that's not a problem in Guwahati. If you blink, the traffic won't have moved. You could actually fall asleep, and you'll still be right in downtown. So it's just a completely different sense of scale and a sense of life and energy and things that are there So yeah, we should spend more time in Guwahati, please. I think it's an amazing place.
Yeah, I think Bill was very impressed. Even driving from the airport to home, he was like, "Wow, this is such an amazing place," and the natural beauty of Assam. He was very, very impressed.
But that was the first time you were coming to Guwahati after you got married?
Yes.
I guess so.
Yeah.
We did other trips.
Were you trying to impress her, Bill?
No. I'm the one who's impressed. I need to. Yeah. I'm just along for the ride.
What do you love most about Assam and Guwahati?
Oh, well, for me, there's so many different things. Obviously the people, the family is there. That's an enormously rich, network of people, and there's a huge family. I'm from a relatively small family, but Indrani has more than a dozen aunts and uncles, and that's completely foreign to me, basically. So, that's a big, rich part, very warm. Also just the scenery for me is a big thing. I grew up, hiking and walking and backpacking and so on. So exploring just the hills and the rivers and all those things is really inspiring. I think IIT Guwahati has such a beautiful campus where we were very fortunate to visit and do some workshops there. So lots to look forward to every time we visit.
And Indrani, what you don't like about the US?
No, what do I not like about the US? Sometimes it can be a little isolating, because in India you're surrounded by people. You don't even have to talk to anybody. You get out of your house and you go on the street and you see so much activity. In the US, we live in Cambridge, which is across the river from Boston. Sometimes it's very quiet. So yeah, that can be a little, at times isolating. That's all. Otherwise, yeah, I like lots of things about the US.
And what are
She's
you
used to the cold.
Yeah, go on, Bill.
Oh, she's gotten used to the cold.
Basically. Oh, yes, I've gotten used to the cold. Yes, when I first moved here, it was just freezing. Boston is freezing in the winters, but now I'm used to it. Yeah. Okay,
Watson has written in again, and it's an interesting comment, so I'm taking it up. Madam Indrani looks beautiful, like Rani Mukherjee.
Oh my goodness! Thank you. Thank you so much. You're very generous.
So was Sir Bill, I don't know whether you've been knighted, Bill, Sir Bill, aware of that? Both looks are perfectly matched.
Oh, I'm every day aware. Yes.
Oh.
There are several deities in our house, but the biggest one is right here. So yes, it's been a constant inspiration. I don't choose my clothes anymore. I take advice from more stylish people. So.
But very generous. Thank you so much for your comments.
Indrani, the final questions on the home front and personal front and all. What do you miss about home? Can we send something to you from Guwahati?
What do I miss about home? Of course, I miss the people.
We can't send. There's like all the flights are canceled.
I miss food. I miss the food, definitely. That's something about home that I really miss. Yeah, maybe you can pack some food and send to me.
Which foods?
Yeah, which foods? Well, there's a lot of things. Just like different fish dishes in Assam, that I really miss, because there's lots of river fishes that we eat there. I haven't been able to find, things that match the taste here. So yeah.
I think anything that's food is necessarily Indian food. American food is just ingredients. I've been informed it's not properly cooked.
They don't come together.
That's right.
There's a lot of Indian food here, but I wish there was something northeastern as well.
I'm sure there are Assamese restaurants in the US.
It is. In Boston we haven't found, but in New York they have Bangladeshi restaurants. So I think there's stuff that is from the Assamese menu. Yeah, you can find at these places. Yeah.
Okay. There's one more interesting question that my colleague Suparna gave me earlier in the day. She says that, you come from an artistic background in Assam. You're trained in fine arts from a very early age. From there to go to studying architecture in college and then design, more specifically industrial design. How did
Yes.
it work out? How did that journey work out? It's interesting.
Yeah, so yeah, I went to the Assam Fine Arts and Crafts Society. Those were really my roots into the world of design. So yes, I mean Sunday I used to go to art school. It's in Judges Field in Guwahati. Growing up, yeah, that's the memory of weekends. So that kind of paved the way in my interest in architecture. I did architecture from my bachelor's in Nagpur. I think it's very similar in a lot of ways. Arts, architecture, design, because in design, we're trying to identify constraints from users. For example, I talk to users in my work and try to identify their needs and, design constraints around which I design a prototype, right? So architecture was very similar. You talk to your clients and you take their requirements and needs and you design the plan of a home. So I think at a high level, they're very similar that way. What ties all of them together is, the creativity part of it. But design also brings in science because, there's the art where you create a prototype, but you also have to test it and see if people are able to use your prototype. And so, yes, so it's basically art meets science, and it's been quite a journey. But I wouldn't say I've gone away from art or architecture because a lot of the principles are still the same.
Right. And this question, another interesting question is both of you. It's very interesting. As researchers and designers, you follow specific methodologies, standard operating procedures when you design, when you experiment or build a product or put it to work.
Mhm.
But what are some of your own guiding principles in life? First, I guess, Bill.
Guiding principles in life. Well, I'll have to think about this one. I think, one thing that's kind of a big important value in user-centered design and technology design for, specific communities is to stay grounded. I mean, to spend time immersed in those communities, to have participation from everyone and not just from the researchers, to share ideas early on and be prepared for things to fail, be prepared to iterate on things. That it's a long journey with lots of failure is a good thing in user-centered design because it means you're improving ideas and making progress towards better ideas. And I think that could probably apply to life in various ways, that we need to, stay grounded in the context, have our eyes open, approach every day with, humility, that it's not our expertise that usually makes the difference, but much more our ability to listen and be receptive to, the things we don't expect around us, and to continually improve and to continually grow. And I feel like, the work we've done in India tries to be grounded like that, to start from the bottom up and be prepared to adjust to every day without preconceived notions of what success would look like.
Yeah.
Indrani, same question to you.
So I think, it's very similar for me. Staying grounded, being receptive, and also like listening to the context, the people, and in life, I mean, I think staying humble and staying grounded is very important for me, both professionally and personally. I mean, our work is built on those foundations. I spend a lot of time in communities. I've lived in the house of a farmer, trying to understand user needs. So yes, I think a lot of these principles of user-centered design also. I try to, apply them to life as well in general.
Right. So let's now get to some questions on the topic for today, which is tech for socio-economic development. As a journalist, as I've seen, whenever there is a need, we've always seen those people who are not tech, for whom the tech is not adapted for. Like when the smartphones came in first, you just have the English language, right? And now in the villages, when I go, I see an old man who does not know how to read and write doing a Google search. And he uses the voice application to click, and he does Google search. And which is amazing for me to see in a village in Rajasthan. And I was seeing how, those who are below the poverty line are slowly adapting themselves to technology. The biggest challenge we saw was during this COVID-19. I myself faced it because there were a few migrant laborers here stuck near my house in Noida, and they wanted to go back to Tripura. But when I tried to register them, I went into the portal, and it was all in English, quite complicated. You had to fill in the forms because they do not even have a smartphone with them. So I thought it's a challenge. And how do you go about solving it? COVID has thrown up a lot of questions to us. This is a reality. If you want to teach children in the Northeast, we do not have internet. So live classes where the teacher interacts with the students, two-way classes are not possible. So it's mostly one way. My sister, who's a teacher, goes to the radio station and does a class, gives the lessons, making it as interesting as possible. But it's not the same as having two-way communication. What can technology do in these situations, Indrani?
So I think there's of course, there's online scenarios, but I think there are examples in the research world where we're trying to extend, the benefits of technology also to offline scenarios. So, for example, I want to talk about Digital Green, should I say? So, Digital Green is this nonprofit. It started off as a research project in Microsoft Research, India. I was on the board of Digital Green for 10 years. So, what Digital Green does is, disseminate best practices in agriculture to small groups of farmers. So basically it's agriculture extension. And the setup is that there is a village mediator who's showing a short film of 10 minutes to a group of farmers, like 12, 15 farmers seated together in a farmer home. And they pause every few minutes and there's conversations about the subject matter. And that was found to be 10 times more effective than traditional agriculture extension. So it's just a handheld projector, and does not require internet. And people are, watching the video and it's paused and this conversation is very effective. Now, Digital Green has 1 million farming households across the world that they're working with. So those kind of scenarios where, it's kind of offline, right? They have been found to be very effective. So maybe things like that might work. We need to think of those scenarios as well.
Right. Interesting there, Bill, this is a problem offline because there are large pockets of areas in the Northeast. If we specifically talk about a region which do not have internet connectivity. Luckily, there's one in every village I've gone to. There's one point where they've put a bamboo and it says 4G point. That's one point in the village where you get 4G. And because of low population, if you go to that point, the internet is pretty fast, but then you have to travel maybe 1, 2, 3 kilometers. In Sikkim, I've seen it. I'm sure they are in the Northeast. How do you solve this problem? The balloons have been talked about. Some have talked about drones. They've talked about satellites. How do we solve this?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really interesting challenge. I agree with what you said earlier. I think we actually have a paper from the group that says, where there's a will, there's a way. So basically, as soon as people figure out that you can listen to music on a phone or you can watch a video on your phone, people figure out how to make that work, even when it's not very obvious. So, for example, you mentioned connectivity. What people will often do is they figured out they can go to that hub and transfer media files over Bluetooth or over, sidecar sharing, local Wi-Fi, other solutions. And then they use the people power. The one thing that they have in abundance is to, their feet. And so get that content on the phone, and often it moves around, it goes into stores, it goes back into remote communities. And we've been thinking increasingly, can we utilize those people in the equation, not just the airwaves and the bits, but actually send content and have interactions that's powered by human intermediaries. And you can look up, there's actually a project at MSR, Microsoft Research in Bangalore, called BlendNet, which is trying to do exactly that, which is blending kind of the cloud connectivity, which is really important, but then also using human actors to move that content to the most remote edges, while still coordinating intelligently how files should flow and come back. So I think it's a really exciting area. And it's always just inspiring to see the solutions people come up with. I think, it's hard enough for me to send a single file, over Bluetooth. You have to click all the buttons and get all the sharing and everything. We've watched people that are blind do that in front of us, and they've memorized all the steps. And so people learn, and actually it's enormously popular amongst blind and visually impaired because they don't have a lot of other, content that, on TV and so on, but they have audio on their phone and they're transferring it in very innovative ways. And so what can we learn from that? How can we learn and incorporate that knowledge and those, grassroots inventions back into the systems that we build?
So I think user motivation is very important. Where there is the motivation, in this case, the motivation is entertainment files. They're exchanging video, audio, songs of movies. That's their main motivation. But if the motivation exists, people, it really trumps usability challenges. People will go all out. So that's what we've observed in our research.
So is voice the answer? Because I know, Bill has worked on Audio Wiki. Is voice the answer?
So I think it is very promising. So there's voice output, right? Voice is an output. There's voice input where you can talk in your mother tongue for search. I think there's a lot of research in our lab going on. People are very interested in how do you do voice technologies for low resource languages. So for languages like Assamese, for example, there's not a lot of data that you can train these systems on, right? So how do you do design voice technologies, voice input for low resource languages? So how do you collect a lot of data from the ground and train technologies to understand, this data?
Right.
So researchers are working on it, and I think Indrani has also studied how users actually interact with those systems, which is sometimes surprising.
Sometimes, it's surprising. For example, we were doing this project called Video Kheti, where you had to, interact with the system. Either you could use touch input or you could use voice input. So a lot of things that we learned from the ground. For example, people who had a little more exposure, they would barge in. They would not even let the system finish. They would barge in. Sometimes, the system expects you to say things in a very structured manner. For example, you have to say to the system, please find me a video of da-da-da, right? So, but humans are not used to talking in such structured manners. So I think we have a long way to go in, allowing people to interact with these technologies in natural ways, through natural, unstructured speech. So how do you build these technologies? Those are very interesting questions. Also, we saw that women in these villages were often very quiet because, maybe the father-in-law was in the, adjacent room and they did not want to speak up. So the system did not recognize their voice as well as the voices of the men. So how do you take all these issues into consideration? Issues of gender, issues of literacy, tech literacy, while designing these technologies. So it's very interesting challenges, and you get to learn about them when you spend time in the field.
Right. There's a question that I have right now from Subarna. She is saying the question might be a little broad spectrum, but when you work on something like development of subsistence economies, what is the goal that you are working towards personally? What indicators are you looking for?
Absolutely. Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Please.
So, there's, of course, socio-economic indicators, how do you help people make more money? But I think it's also about well-being. How do you let people have the freedom to choose? I think, so development as freedom, like Amartya Sen says, I think that is something to think about. So not just economic development, but, well-being and the freedom to have options. I think that would be my take.
Mm-hmm. I guess the way I've come to think about it is, people can go in a room and debate for hours and hours, the one best definition of what development means and so on. I've come to believe that there are just many valid different goals, specific goals, often that are very personal to different people, the way we all choose our own, meaning in our careers and so on. So I've chosen to focus on very specific goals that, we should reduce the mortality due to tuberculosis, or we should, reduce infant mortality, or, increase literacy at 10th grade, or whatever it is. And I think going after those very specific metrics and find some that we can get, passionate about is often, the easiest way to have clarity about what we're doing. So don't try to solve the entire world's problem at once. These are often very interlinked problems, and different places have different combinations and dependencies between health and education and livelihoods and everything else. But going after something specific and that we can measure, I think is a good approach.
Right. Bill, you had worked on a CGNet Swara, which is a very interesting project. I think we when I was at CNN IBN, at that time, I think later we started doing citizen journalism and getting in touch with, different people on the ground, getting them to report in a more structured way. But we were sending our video journalists to shoot. Here, the story was that, communities, people on the ground were doing their reporting, and we saw some incredible work there. What do you, according to you, because of the challenges that journalism is facing today, in every way, financial, what do you think will be the future of journalism in terms of technology? Do you think it will be driven more by AI, or do you still see the traditional journalism staying?
Hey, absolutely. No, that's a huge $1 million question that a lot of people are thinking about in the future of journalism and technology. Just for clarity, I'm not a journalist. I come to this from a very humble technology perspective. CGNet Swara is an excellent nonprofit organization led by Shubhranju Chowdhury that does citizen journalism and participatory media in rural areas. And so we've been trying to ask, what's the role technology might play in helping enable such organizations to be more responsive to kind of the citizens. That the media houses often are controlled by a small number of people, and can we make it more of a democratic, open, participatory platform? The same way we see often, in internet websites, for example, where things everyone has the ability to publish information and to have some kind of voice online. And I think when we come back to the question of kind of voice and so on, I think it's very easy to listen to content if you're unable to read, if you're unable to write. But how can you contribute content? How can we, enable anyone, let's say a low-literate farmer, to actually participate in a conversation, if that's in the media or if that's, online or whatever it is. So that's kind of been our agenda over the years, is to see, can we make it much more accessible and inclusive, where anyone with a basic mobile phone could contribute a view or could, contribute a story, voice a challenge or a problem. And that's kind of been the vision uniting projects, like CGNet Swara and others. I think it's still a much bigger and open question how we can really achieve kind of a community with citizen journalism, how we can have, a combination of kind of the checks and balances that we need, from people that are, accredited, say, and to do the deep kind of investigative work with kind of the participation that comes. And how is that conversation moderated? How is that, balancing the different viewpoints and, mix of professional versus non-professional. And so those are big open questions. And I think technology will just be the mediator of those conversations. But in the end, those are very challenging kind of human and community problems to think through. And even without technology, that would be a very tough problem. So I think, that's very much open work and open questions.
Right. And especially when we look at misinformation, what most people call fake news, in fighting that, maybe technology, of course, can help in a huge way in going through pictures, identifying videos and all. I mean, there are, but we still have a long way to go. Now coming to the challenges, the unprecedented challenge, which everybody says, which has been thrown up by COVID-19, and the problems I'm sure both of you have followed in India, and I already talked to you about, the migrants. Do you think the way we work, the way, because everything is now, right now, even in India, no matter how uncomfortable, most of us are working from home. What do you think? What are the changes you think COVID-19 brings?
I think, working from home is going to become more and more common. It's great. It allows you flexibility, but I feel like I really hope we don't lose the human touch, because I feel like I get so much energy from meeting people in office. I really miss the one-on-one interaction, which is offline, And I think, yes, I hope we have flexibility of both when we go back to the new normal, where there is online, and it's flexible. You could take calls whenever you want from home. But I think I really hope we don't lose the human touch, where we, just hang out casually, which you cannot do currently on these calls, right? It's pretty structured. You allocate 1 hour, you're in front of a camera. It's not very natural. So I hope technologies get designed such that you can just hang out and, it's serendipitous. And so, yeah, I hope it becomes a little more natural.
Right. Bill?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, it's been just enormously disruptive. I mean, the emergency response to COVID, the process of recovering and getting by. And I think, what's just starting to be imagined is what it will be like to rebuild after, and, what that world could look like. And if there's any silver lining to the whole experience, it's whether we can have more positive, embracing of technology to help with things like working from home, or things that, maybe we don't all need to clog the roads every day to commute somewhere else. And so I think, the opportunity is whether we can think through, when we're forced to do something, we are forced to innovate. Basically, necessity is the mother of invention. And so now that everyone has to be remote, can we for a little while at least, maybe there could be a breakthrough where we figure out how to do it a little bit better and appreciate things that are actually positive this way around. Of course, notwithstanding the enormous challenges faced by people outside of a normal working environment. We're, of course, extremely privileged in the small minority to be working full time and with minimal disruption during this time. But I think for us as researchers, we're thinking ahead for what that future of work would look like in this environment.
And especially for people who are not able to work from home, I mean, like Bill said, we feel very privileged and we are a small minority, but what about frontline workers? How do you enable technologies for them to be able to do remote participation, I guess? I think that might be an interesting area of research as well.
Right. You've taken the second question, which I was following up. You've taken that. You kind of answered that question. So my question to you, Indrani, was, if there was a problem you would want to solve around COVID, what would that problem be and why?
A problem around COVID.
We could mention the Learn to Earn work if you want.
Oh yeah, we could.
And other work in the lab.
Yeah. So learned. I mean, we were trying to see. There's a crowdsourcing where a task that is not a computer cannot do, right? It's broken up into micro tasks and it's distributed among humans, and humans do like small chunks of the work and they get paid for it. So that's called crowdsourcing. So typically crowdsourcing is done by people who have access to a computer and have some kind of literacy level. So we were working on this project called Learn to Earn, where we try to see if crowdsourcing is possible in resource constrained settings. Right?
Yeah, and Project Karya is
and Project Karya.
Yeah.
So should I talk about Karya?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So Karya is Karya is this project where what happens is people are able to do crowdsourcing from their phones. They can do like some work like digitization and get paid for it. So I think for COVID, a lot of people are losing their jobs because of, especially in the unorganized sector. So how do you enable people who have access to maybe a phone and some education in a local language? How do you enable them to do work like crowdsourcing, like digitization, let's say from their phone sitting at home and get paid for it? So that could be an opportunity. So the project is called Karya, and we can talk about Learn to Earn as well. So yeah, just like helping people stay employed because of the challenges thrown by COVID-19, especially people in the informal sector who have lost their jobs. Like, how do you enable them to also work from home and do respectable, digital work with minimal technical skills? So that's an opportunity. And Learn to Earn. Sorry, you can talk about Learn to Earn.
Sure. Well, of course. I mean, there are so many projects where technology could empower health organizations to achieve more. That's Microsoft's mission is for every person and organization to achieve more. And so, I think from Microsoft, we've already seen all kinds of tools and support that's gone out in response to COVID. I mean, for example, the chatbot infrastructure that's been used to build more than 1,000 chatbots around the world to reach out to patients and make that information more accessible. Because of course, when the public health system is so overwhelmed, there's just such a shortage of expertise and workers that are available for personal interactions. So can technology help to play an intermediary there and triage the common questions and point people to where and when they should get more advice? And of course, when you get even up into the kind of patient care, we'll see more remote visits and checkups. We've already had a pediatrician over video, and I think things like Microsoft Teams and so on could potentially play a role there. So we're definitely thinking through how to help empower the health system with better technology. We also have some other projects as research projects. We mentioned Learn to Earn is basically thinking through like you said, the accurate information. I think the Director General of the WHO said it's not just an epidemic, it's an infodemic at this point, that getting the right information to the right people is a core part of the challenge. And so how can we do that outreach, especially in the last mile where people get news through word of mouth and through all kinds of other mechanisms? How can we reach those remote populations? So we're thinking through, can we have campaigns over mobile or over WhatsApp with some interaction and with some quizzes and so on, where we can actually start to measure, for example.
Yeah, instead of like doing campaigns where you spend a lot of money putting up banners on the streets, could you just, have people call on to a phone number and they listen to a conversation, and then at the end of it, they answer questions about, let's say, COVID-19. And if they answer the questions correctly, they receive a small top up on their mobile phone. So you have the financial incentive, and then, and through word of mouth, this technology spreads. So we've done some research along those lines as well. So it's how do you enable the right information spreads with tied to financial incentives. And that's another research project.
And these are all research projects, by the way, in partnership with outside organizations. So, none of these are a Microsoft product. Fair warning. These are early stage to understand what's possible and supporting other organizations to build things like this.
So that's really interesting. Okay, now that we are moving towards the final leg, we just have a few minutes to go, I guess. There are some questions I would like to take. Here's one interesting question. Both of you come from different cultures, from two different continents. What are the few things you've discovered about each other's cultures, or you were surprised to learn about? I'll start with Indrani, you first.
What was I surprised to learn about in Bill's culture? I think, I've learned to be more grateful, I guess. In Bill's family, people are like very, if you cooked food for them, they're like, oh, thank you. And, they're very grateful, and they would say it, they would vocalize it. Growing up, in an Indian culture, we're not so vocal. We often take our families for granted in terms of we don't thank them as often and things like that, right? So I think that's something that was surprising, but I've also kind of like picked it up. So that's been useful because gratefulness is always good. In India, we're not so vocal, I guess, about things that we appreciate about our family members or friends. So that's something positive that I was surprised by and have tried incorporating.
Yeah, I think if there's anything India teaches you very well is that you also have to be flexible. I might have grown up on a pretty tight schedule, lickety split, dinner time, waking up time, everything on time, and so on. It's a different experience where you have to be accommodating of unexpected things in life, and everyone has to accommodate. I've really enjoyed more than a year that we've lived often with other family members in the house, helping take care of our daughter and things like that are not usually part of American culture. To have such the communal, valuing of extended family, I think is an enormously positive thing. And so, having that ability to embrace, all of the fluidity and flexibility of life, and also learn to really choose the small handful of battles that are worth fighting for. I think that's one thing that we learn when we're faced with other flexibilities. So,
okay, one more question, easy one. What is that one book that you would absolutely recommend reading?
Geek
right
Heresy.
There. Yeah, it's at the edge of the book. Should I get it?
Yeah, maybe we can get it. Geek Heresy by our mentor, Kentaro Toyama. He is the one who hired both of us in the Technology for Emerging Markets group at Microsoft Research. So do you want to talk about the book? Maybe you can summarize better than I do.
Well, it's great. I mean, Indrani is quoted in this book. I read all the chapters before they were published. It's basically a retrospective by the man that at least attracted me to come to India on both the potential and, more importantly, limitations of technology when we aspire for it to make a big difference in the lives of the poorest. And so, getting back to the theme of grounding, I think there's nothing better that would ground any technology researcher or technologist to see kind of the ways that those aspirations can fall short, that are deep human problems and institutional problems, and that often we're looking for silver bullet solutions that may or may not exist. And so really the way to have the best progress is to engage deeply in those human challenges, to grow the people around us, to all have more, better wisdom and better education. And then technology can just help as a tool once we have those foundational building blocks in place. And so I think that's been a really important lesson that from the School of Hard Knocks over a decade of failed projects and a few successes from the group. So
Great. One final question, and that comes from our friend, I think mutual friend, and my co-founder of East Mojo, Tanushree Hazarika. She says, Indrani and Bill, thank you so much for coming on our show. Thank you from me also. Sending lots of love from Guwahati. Can we get to see Tara? And she's put a smile.
Oh, let me see. She's watching TV. Let me see.
Okay. Very good. Mm-hmm.
So till then, Bill, you can fill the vacuum, no?
I can fill it.
By talking about what you like about Guwahati. Do you like, have you watched Assamese movies?
Oh, here and there. I'm exposed to a broad sample of Indian cinema. I think Indrani is quite the cinemaphile, so we see all the types, if it's Hindi or Bengali or some of the local films as well, and what's on TV there. So absolutely, I'm learning.
Do you have a favorite actor?
I have several. Okay, here we go. Hey, you can appear on video. Hey, we interrupted your telecast. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, Tara. Thank you so much.
Karma.
Yeah, you can say hi, Karma.
Hi, Karma.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hi.
What were you doing?
So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Sir, can you say hi to all the people who are watching from East Mojo?
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you both. Thank you so much for coming on our show.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure. We'll be watching all the episodes, chiming in with unexpected questions for you to handle. So you can look forward. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank
See
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Take care. Thank you.
With that, we've come to the